whenever we're trying to, let me start over here. So whenever we're trying to go through and determine what type of security controls that we put around our data, we have to figure out what status or what state is it in. There's three different states. There's resting, there's using, and there's motion or transit. And so data at rest, data in motion, and data in use. And so there's different schemes and controls that we can put around it. Most of them rely on modern cryptography to do that. And because of that, usually we try to think of different things that we can do to protect those different assets. So, for instance, data at rest would be anything that is either in external or auxiliary storage devices like hard drives, solid state drives, or even any optical drives, USBs perhaps. So a lot of times we might implement certain types of controls around that. And one of the ways that you could go and figure out how the Department of Defense goes through and tries to adhere to the data at rest is to look at the 111 guidance, Special Publication 111. And in that guidance, it tells us how storage encryption technologies should be used. And so what we try to do is we try to put ourselves into a position where we can protect that information and reduce the risk of accidentally storing sensitive information on an unencrypted volume. I think about, things that are on our smartphones. And if you currently aren't encrypting your smartphone, then, let's say you do something nefarious and you have to give up your cell phone to law enforcement, they will be able to pull that information off with no problem if your phone is not encrypted. If it is encrypted, then it will take much, much longer for them to try to pull intelligent information from that device, if at all, in some cases. So keep that in mind. So things that like data at rest, we might do full disk encryption, use things like BitLocker, for instance, or other mechanisms out there. But for something like data in motion, where we have data that's going between two computing nodes and it goes over a network, whether it's a LAN or a WAN like the internet, then usually what we try to do is we try to protect it with things like TLS, transport layer security, or something like an IPsec, perhaps a VPN, or a combination of some. Maybe using digital certificates, if possible, to encrypt, but certainly using something like that to try to protect data and the assets as it traverses networks is very, very important. So the last one here is a little bit more tricky, the data in use. And this is things like volatile memory and things like RAM and memory cache and CPU registers. So typically what we usually will see is these are some of the more difficult ones to try to encrypt. And if you're trying to pull information off of a device, if you unplug the device or it loses power, you may actually lose some of that volatile memory. So, keep that in mind as you're going through and preparing or reading some of these things about it. What's one way that you may think of that we could potentially encrypt volatile memory, is there some sort of application that you know of that you could use to encrypt volatile memory? Anybody? Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's very difficult because in order for you to use data, if I'm encrypting data at rest, so let's say that the machine is off, the data on the disk would be encrypted at rest. When it's powered on, in order for it to be powered on, we have to unencrypt it, and then some remnants of that may go into volatile memory, and it typically is decrypted before it's used. So it's very difficult to protect that volatile memory and encrypt it. But there are some programs out there that do that. One of the ones that can actually pull information from that volatile memory is a tool called Volatility, and it actually pulls and will look at the data to see how the encryption worked, if at all. But typically, memory encryption is very difficult. So if you have some good ideas for memory encryption, let's talk offline. Maybe you and I can come up with a joint venture and program something together. But the three different types of data security controls based off the states of data at rest, data in use, and data in motion.